Yes, assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to the session, and let's start with the citation from the Holy Quran and followed by National Anthem. Okay.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. For those of you, I think most of you know me, but those of you who don't know me, my name is Mohsin Jamil. I'm a consulting partner, technology consulting partner at KPMG, and I'm an NRC member responsible for technology and industry CPD. So today we have arranged this session for our finance professionals to get up to speed with what's happening within the technology space, especially in AI, within the banking and finance. It's exciting times. I'm sure most of you have already heard, if not used, ChatGPT, and that's just one tool, right? So there are many out there like ChatGPT. If you're not using it, then you're already behind, right? So my productivity has already gone up by 30–40% since I started using these tools. I think business analysts or people who understand business problems are becoming more relevant now as compared to, I would say, the person who can write code or developers, because Gen AI has changed everything. I mean, the other day I was, talking to Shabazz, and we saw a video where a guy has developed an app to recognize using Gemini model, recognize and identify plants within 20 minutes. It's like hundreds of lines of code. Can you imagine? It was not possible if you go back 5, 6, 7 years ago. But it's possible now. And if you understand the problem, and if you know what to solve, and then I think even if you don't know the code, so you are already there. You become more relevant. And that's why we're here today. We're not here to teach you code. We're not here to teach you become a developer. We're here to make you aware there are tools out there. There are use cases within the banking and finance industry which are very useful. And so after 3–4 years spending here, you won't become expert, but certainly you will become more knowledgeable, and much more tools which you can use to increase your productivity. Shabazz was here for a couple of weeks, and I took that opportunity, to have him here. So he's very kind to, be with us today. So I don't think we could find a better speaker, to be honest. So Shabazz brings around 25 years of technology consulting experience with him with July's KPMG, Hitachi. He leads KPMG's regional AI and emerging tech team based out of Riyadh. And he recently, with Microsoft, we were just discussing outside. So he recently led Microsoft and KPMG joint venture Center of Excellence for AI and emerging tech in Riyadh. So thanks for being here, Shabazz. Hopefully, it'll be an exciting session for you too, interacting with the accountants. So we'll try to make it as interactive as possible. So we saw feedback response from the registered participants. So, there were some banking participants, but most of them were from, outside banking industry. So we changed a few things. We changed a few use cases. We removed, most of the text from the presentation, so he can talk more, so you have less to read. So without any further delay, may I invite Shabazz to come to the stage and enlighten us for the next 3 hours.
Hello, is that better? Yeah, good. All right, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for your time. It's a real pleasure to be here. Maybe I'll hold it. And I hope you get some benefit out of the session, okay? I'm sorry for the cameraman because I tend to pace. So I do that to just engage with you guys. And I do that because I want you to ask the questions. If there's something that I'm not explaining very well, or there's a topic that you go, but wait a minute, what about this? Please ask the question, yeah? I talk about AI a lot. And over 25 years of my career, I've been implementing AI solutions for over 15 years. Thank you. And in doing so, I come to the conclusion, what do I know? And the reason I say that is because in the area of AI, you have to enter with a level of humility, because the thing that you knew yesterday is not the thing for today, and it won't be the thing for tomorrow. So I do this with a view of educating myself and then sharing that back with you guys. So it's a very privileged position I find myself in. And I'm doing this in Riyadh, but I'm passionate about the link here to Pakistan and the ability to create this knowledge sharing initiative. So I'm delighted to be here. So with that, let me jump into what we'll do today. Thank you. Okay, so let me start with a couple of disclaimers. Maybe I'll stand over here. Okay, so I can't talk about AI and not say, look, I use AI, right? It's like I'm in a math exam and I don't use my calculator. It's a bit silly, right? So I do use the tools I talk about today. And so if you want to understand those tools, please ask. Because like Mohsin said, there were two parts of his introduction that were very, very, very important. One is about relevancy. And the second is about efficiency. You can be more efficient with the tools that you have. So the question becomes is, do I have the right tool? Am I using the right AI for my purpose? And we'll touch on some of that today, okay? Okay. The second thing is, AI is so dynamic a topic, right? And I was writing this presentation on Saturday. I finished it and thought, great, job done. I started to do some reading on Sunday. And I thought, wow, my presentation is already out of date. And for those that are interested in the topic, I read something about a new model called Gen 70B. And I'll talk on a little bit about that. But it made what I said on Saturday already a little bit redundant. That is the pace of change. So you have to embrace the dynamic nature of what is happening both here in Pakistan around AI and globally. Yeah. So speed is important. AI is not the answer to everything. Okay. It's an interesting technology that we humans have invented. But it is only one tool. If you look at the history of humans, we have invented many tools, from the spade to the steam engine, to the car, to now AI. So it's the application of the technology that you should consider, not the technology itself. Okay? That's an important position to take for this conversation because I don't intend to go into the details of the technology, right? I'm happy to if there are any questions, but this is a conversation for business people, right? So my focus is through a lens that hopefully is relevant to you, right? So I will keep it at an economic and business level and not a technical level. Should you wish to ask any technical questions, please be my guest. So today, we will structure the conversation in two parts. The first part, what I wish to do is really talk about what it is and what's going on in it. We'll then take a break, and then we'll make it relevant and specific to the finance and banking world. Okay? Now, the reason for doing it that way is because what I hope to do in the next 30, 40 minutes, thank you, is make it relevant to everybody in the room. Yeah. The challenge with a topic like AI is everybody's got an experience of it, but you're all at different levels of experience. So the first 20, 30 minutes, what I try to do is level set that, right? And then we go forward together on discussions around certain topics that I feel are both contemporary and relevant to you guys, okay? So that's how we'll structure today, okay? So let's get into this. This is probably the most technical definition you'll see today, right? And all it says is, if you can interpret AI, a definition of AI, as simply being computers acting like humans, right? And that's it. Because we can get into the technical details of all of that, and we'll explore some of those, but the definition itself can warrant a 3-hour lecture in itself. And we can get really caught in what is AI. And there's been movies on it, and journals that are over 100 years old on it, and it's not new. But rather than do that today, we will take a very simple definition that says the topic we're talking about is computers acting like humans. And that's the basis of how I'll go forward for today's one. I put this slide in because, well, Mohsin by reminding me today that actually Apple have a developer conference, right? And they will announce all of their next generation things, right? What is really interesting about this is Apple are not the first to do AI, right? But what they did in coining the phrase Apple Intelligence, AI, was super interesting. Why? Because the way search works is when you do AI, the first thing its main rival in Google is going to do is show Apple Intelligence. So a marketing genius move, nothing to do with the technology, but again, very relevant to AI. Yeah. And I put this in just to kind of show you, look, it's a fast moving world and even the big guys are working it out. Yes. And that's super important for us. Okay. So AI, Apple Intelligence, not the same thing, but in a search engine, that's what you're going to get. Really interesting. Okay. So let's talk about AI in its biggest context, in its entirety, right? And you'll see the slides that are generated by AI. Because I say, show me this, give me this. Tell me about the building blocks. What is an image of a building builder? This is what they gave me, right? So it's not me creating the imagery, it is AI. But what's really interesting is that it understands the circle, right? And the way you need to interpret AI is based upon your own starting point, yeah? Philosophers will view AI very differently to an economist, to a developer, to an accountant. So what you have to do is understand the lens you look at this topic in, right? And then translate it to the other person's view. Because an economist and a philosopher both have valid points. But you'll see in the media today, the conversation is very different depending on who's saying it. Yeah. If you're a financier and you're making lots of money on investing in this, your view on AI is very different to a parent whose child is acing their homework through, like Mawson said, the use of GPT. Very different. Equally valid. Okay. So what I'm doing here is saying, look, you have to look at AI and the adoption of AI through multiple lenses. It's different to the implementation of a technology product you did last year. Because when you did that ERP solution, when you did that payroll solution, you didn't worry about future skills. You didn't worry about the regulatory landscape because those things had matured over the last few years. But now you do have to worry about some of those things. Yeah. So the speed, the disruption, and the nature of AI is very different. And for you guys, you have to both understand the lens that you look at it from and the lens of other people in your ecosystem. Yeah. An accountant view on AI is very different to a regulatory view on AI, which is very different from that developer view. Yeah. So all of a sudden it feels a little bit more complex, a little bit more challenging, a little bit more new. Yeah. AI is not like implementing ERP. It's principally different, fundamentally different, and an appreciation of that is important as you go forward and define what AI means to your organizations, what it means to your career, right? What it means to the way you will interact with it at a societal level. There are huge implications here that need to be translated, correlated to what you do. And I always start with this view to show you the lens of AI is different depending on where your starting point is, but all equally valid, right? Wonderful. So I'm getting a lot of nods in the room. I take that as this is okay, but if there's any questions or there's things that you'd like to just discuss, we have the time, just please say, yeah? I welcome those, right? Let's go back to disclaimer number 1. What do I know, right? So let's have that conversation, okay? Actually, this is probably the most technical slide I'll do today, not the first one, right? So what I want to show you here is if we take a view of AI, and by the way, let me just say, AI is a term that doesn't mean anything to a purist, right? It's a marketing term. It's a term that everyone generally understands, but it is not a thing in itself. From a technology perspective, it's actually multiple things, right? So let's now evolve our thinking of AI to be an umbrella, right? It is an umbrella for many different technologies that are very different in essence. And some of these technologies have actually been around for 40, 50 years. So not new, right? So now we're talking about AI, and we're talking about things like machine learning. We're talking about natural language processing, which are terms that have been around for at least 25, 30 years. So under that definition, from a computer science perspective, it's not new. Very mature technologies, okay? We also can see in the middle here, some things happening around newer technologies. Deep learning, a form of machine learning, if you will, is very important and new, that has enabled another set of technologies around natural language models, large language models and small language models, models nonetheless. That has spun a new term, which is a marketing term, generative AI. Generative AI is not a thing. It's an umbrella term like artificial intelligence for everybody to understand. But actually, generative AI is our friends, large language models and deep learning coming together in that little diagram, right? So the technology that we're talking about, on one hand, paradoxically, is very old, machine learning. New technologies, large language models, that are changing every day. So the infusion of all of this stuff is very, very real to everybody in the technology space. Now, go back to my analogy of a lens. So if you're a computer scientist, you understand this, right? If you are a user of this AI, you go, well, I actually understand generative AI. Behind the scenes, what you're actually playing with is large language models. And we'll come back to large language models. They're super interesting in technology. And variants of that in small and large language models. An example of that is, Mawson said GPT. Let's stay with that analogy. So GPT is a product of that Venn diagram, right? It is an end user application, right? That is powered by some of that stuff, okay? And for 99% of the population, you don't need to know that. This is not a slide you need to know, right? But it is interesting from a viewpoint of the technology is maturing quickly, and in many cases not new. And I'll explain why in a second. Now, super simply, how AI works is on the top line, right? AI is nothing but data that has been trained to do something, okay? So you take it to processing. I process this data, and I've given you an answer, an output, right? And in most simplest terms, that is GPT, a model that has been trained on, well, actually the internet is billions of data sets. Literally every data set they could find, they put through the model. And that processing turned it into the trained model. The trained model can then give you an output, okay? So actually, let's demystify this whole AI thing, right? It is not mystical. It is data, and lots of data being trained to do something, right? And we as the humans are the ones doing the training. So we are the ones that are defining what this needs to look like. What are the parameters? What are the rules? What are the calculations? And that model is only the result of something that we have designed, done, and created, okay? And then it's processed, trained to do the thing you want it to do, right? So now, actually, AI is not that complicated. It's just something being done at a very large industrial scale, yeah? And that's as far as I'm going to go on the technology side of things. But now, if you can understand that AI, computers acting like humans, via data that we have given a model to understand and then give an output to, yeah? And I think that's 6 months of computer science right there. Okay? That is it. Yeah, there isn't anything in that other than the complexity and the tools and the techniques and the way of doing it, right? Now, here are 2 things that we're going to go forward with. It's all about the data. the data you hold in your organization, the data you hold as a person, because that's now super interesting, right? And the processing, how you get from lots of random data to a sensible output. Processing means you can do this thing at scale. You can do it quickly, right? So now there's two terms we're going to take forward. One is around the importance of data. And then the second thing we're going to take forward is how that data is processed. Yeah. I'm getting a lot of nods in the room, and I'm going to take that as a sign that you're still following me, right? So wonderful. Now, in itself, that is quite a technical set of things to understand, right? Because now we've put a definition onto something that most people don't really scratch the surface on, right? So I'm feeling like I've done something quite good there, but let's see, let's take this forward, right? And let's have a look at this now with the reasons why this is all happening, right? So we've spent 5 or 10 minutes talking about what it is, AI, nothing more than data and processing, and why that's important. Why now, right? If I said to you, well, machine learning's been around for 45 years, you go, well, why now, right? Why today? And if we go back to our building block analogy, let's put an economic lens on the next few slides, right? That's as technical as I'm going to get. For the economists in the room, the next slides are for you because it is all about the economics, right? That is why AI is important now, right? That's why it's in the news every day. So let's do that. There has been a seismic shift in the hardware available for AI, period. That's the point, right? Our ability to compute has exponentially increased over the last 30 years, right? And for those older than me, I had one of these, right? It was in 1980 something, what, 2 probably, right? And for those not in the room, that's called a disk drive, and it had a floppy disk, right? I can explain that in the break, no problem at all. But there are people that, what is that, right? But most of us will recognize those early forms of desktop computers. 250 transistors, right? And I thought they were amazing. Within one generation, we now end up at 19 billion transistors. Yeah. And just fathom that exponential increase in horsepower. Yeah. It's not even like going from walking to a rocket ship. It's exponentially more. So the reason why AI now, because the theory was written in 1950, is that in 1970, 1980, 1990, there wasn't the processing power available to make the theory reality. And at some point over the last decade, we just hit that tipping point, right? So the reason why now is the availability of compute, right? But not just the availability of compute or processing, as we described in this previous slide, but the economics of it, right? That's what we will talk about next. Because the thing that changed is the price per compute dollar spend. Yeah, that's the point. And for the economists in the room, that's the game changer. That's the moment you go, ah, why now, right? Because simply put, the price per compute did that, right? So if you look at where we were in 1935, actually the one I like to talk to is 1 unit process in roughly 1965 took $1. 1 unit does not do anything. That's 1 character, A, right? Cost $1. So if you have to train the internet, it's not affordable. Yeah. Now, 1 billion compute or processing units is available for $1 spent. That's the game changer. Okay. Now, there's also a really interesting lens that I'm going to shift you from an economic view, because you all understand that graph, right, to a philosophical view, right? Let's have a look at the same graph, but now pretend we're philosophers, right? And we say, roughly in 1960, right, it would take $1 for 1 compute, right? And now in 2024, it's around $1 billion per compute, right? So if you are interacting with a machine in 1960, to write the word "and" would take you $3. roughly speaking, right? Because that's kind of a compute power needed. 3 characters, $3, done. Write a sentence, quite expensive. Write a book, very expensive. Training on a data set like the internet, infathomable, right? Now, from a computer's perspective, so now let's switch and be the computer. Let's be that AI, right? If you're writing one character a second, it's pretty slow to write a sentence, right? So the computers today can process 1 billion compute units in a second, right? So from a computer's perspective, to talk to a human is akin to talking to a tree, yeah? Because it can do 1 billion a second. And I can type, I don't know, let's be kind, 100 words a second. Can't do that. Let's say 50 words a second. I can't do that. Let's say I do and. So my sentence might take me, let's be kind to my typing speed and say 60 seconds. In 60 seconds, a computer can do 60 billion transactions, processing units. Yeah. So it's waiting a long time for a human to give it instruction in its speed terms. Yes. And from a philosophical point of view, that time is an eternity. 60 billion units, and you could fill maybe 20, right? So the reason people talk about AI being a game changer is the speed in which it can carry out an instruction. The speed in which you'll carry out that instruction whilst not waiting for you. Because I've still got 54 billion something things I can do while I wait for you to type an instruction or even speak to me. Yeah. And for those that are experimenting with GPT, I'll just use your GPT as an example. If you're speaking to it, it's still very bored. Yeah. Because it's still waiting for you to finish your instruction. Yeah? And that's the difference. That's the game changer. So from a philosophical perspective, I get mischievous. And I say, well, that's like a human talking to a tree. And we'll come to this concept of how humans and AIs interact when one is so exponentially quicker, faster than the other. How do these worlds meet? Super interesting question. We'll get onto that. But that was a slight aside. I just throw in to say, look, the reason why now is this economic change. Yeah, that's the importance here. And for those of you who have been, please. Yes, it's a uniform unit cost. All of those things, energy, labor, all of those things are in that $1. Yes, so it's just a approximation. Yeah, and to do a one processing step roughly equates to $1. That's what the graph shows. All right, let's move it forward. So AI and this rise in processing has actually broken some really valued principles in computing. One of them was called Moore's Law that says, you know, what we do roughly doubles every 2 years, right? And we always saw computers on that kind of doubling. We always saw phones kind of getting better every 18, 24 months. So Moore's Law was this thing that says, this is how you can expect the future of technology to go, right? Guess what? Our friends at NVIDIA, and we'll come to them just an example. I'm not sponsored by NVIDIA, but we'll talk about NVIDIA as an example, okay? Did that on the green. And you go, wait, what? So they are throwing away the rule book that's been around for the last 20, 30 years in the way in which we as humans understand how we can advance in technology. Yes, the principal metric for that globally, uniformly, was this thing called Moore's Law. NVIDIA came and did that. And I think, you know, free market economics being a thing, if you do that in the industry, that's how you get to be $1 trillion overnight. Yeah, not quite overnight. They've been around for years and we can talk about them, but that's the point about the game changer in processing. Okay, so if we go back a few slides, I talked about what is AI? Well, it's a bucket load of data and it's processing. Okay, processing is the why now, that graph there. right? That's the bit to really understand, all right? So if we move this forward, let's talk about AI in its cycles, right? And I get mischievous here, and the images are generated by my friend Gemini. But the point is this, right? Over the last 25 years, we have said we have been in an area of AI, which we can call analytics, right? That says, tell me something, right? And you've all been the recipient of the technology that says, tell me something, a management report, a forecast, a piece of analysis done in Excel, right? Has been able, because you're using the tools, to say, tell me something, yeah? So we have been doing predictive analytics. I've been doing predictive analytics for at least 20 years, right? And that is a form of machine learning that has been around in the finance systems you all use, right? Where the simple interaction from the AI or the computer is, tell me something. The era of perception. Perception means I just need that bit of insight that I didn't have before. And you've all got personal examples of where the data is too complex to understand, and you've just asked the machine, tell me something. Whether that's a script in old VB terms, or a pivot table, or a more advanced form of predictive analytics, yeah? So typically, and in broad strokes, I'm being very generous to myself with definitions, but I just want you to understand that the last 20 years in this advanced analytics space we call AI has been, just tell me something, okay? Around 3 years ago, that changed. And it changed with the introduction of large language models. Go back to our little Venn diagram of what else is now possible. So we've gone from tell me something to generate me something. Give me the answer. I know you got the calculation, now tell me what that means, right? And this is where large language models really kicked in. So I can tell you the answer to that question, yeah? I can do more than tell you the answer to the question. I can write you the report. And if you want a picture in that report, I can generate that picture for you too, right? So we've gone from tell me something to generate me something. And the world went, wait, what? Computers can do that? Computers can create original content? Yes, because you've asked the data to do something and process to give you an answer. Go back to data and processing. That exponential curve means we can do that now. And that technology is called large language models, means deep learning. Back to our little diagram, right? So we've now gone from an era of give me insight to give me new content. Yes? And if I move that forward just one more step for you guys to where we will go next, it goes to then go do something for me. Because it's all well and good telling me I have a flight tomorrow, and that's really helpful, to go book it for me and book my hotel and find the lowest cost alternative, use my bank details, work with another AI agent to make that transaction secure, and just give me my reference, right? So automation through the use of agents is a natural step. In the same way, some of you remember 15 years ago, we started to integrate systems via the internet, and that started to lead to automation efficiencies. Automation efficiencies now are being done via AI. So the next wave, and look how quickly these waves are coming together, right? No sooner are we going to get used to generate me something to automate me something. And automation is everything from driverless cars, just drive the car, thank you, to a mobile phone or even your glasses with an AI agent on that will tell you what you need to do. So agent-led AI is the next wave. It's happening today. It's not something that, is esoteric and in the future. There is a huge market around automation. And if you look at the AI companies that are working in this space as startups, they are already valued in their billions, right? They haven't even done anything yet. But they're cracking the code that says automation is the next wave, the benefit of AI. Because creating a picture, writing a song is fine, but does it have economical value? Don't know, interesting discussion. But if you automate things for me and automate things within my organization, so actually my back office now runs great, thank you very much, and I didn't need to worry about all the things that I need to do because you've automated that payroll run and paid everybody and done the corresponding tax return and made sure that my ledgers are all good, is a really interesting next step. Scary, because that's what technology does. It comes and provokes change. In the same way, the Industrial Revolution was quite bad news for the agricultural revolution, right? But we humans worked it out. The AI revolution will do a similar thing. It will automate tasks, agent AI, right? That is actually done because it was created in the digital economy. And in 10 years' time, in 5 years' time, you will see the digital economy we thought was amazing look really inefficient. And that is both the opportunity and the threat in front of us. Yeah? Good. It looks like I've stunned you all, so let me move on to another slide that will stun you all. All right, so let's keep going. Now, what does that mean? Because the meaning is important here, right? I always go, and so what, right? So I got to thinking, and actually, this is a slide I drew. That's why the graphics aren't very good, right? But I drew it because here's an interesting point, right? That you say, if you look at we as humans, and let's go back to our wheel of AI lenses, and let's look at this from a socio-economic perspective, right? We as humans, actually, over history, haven't got any smarter or dumber than we've always been. Yeah, we've always been outliers. Einstein goes not so great. Me, right? We've all operated in that IQ spectrum, right? That's how we work, okay? And over the last 50 years, we've been training these AI models. And if we take IQ as a measurement for smartness, you can see that they have been getting smarter, right? Because we've been training them on more data. They've been processing faster. So they have been learning. And over time, there is a thing that says from those transistors that weren't very good, computers go mainstream in the 80s, through to AI goes mainstream largely now, to the next wave, agents running things, AGI, they are getting smarter than us. So let's go back to our analogy of a tree and a human, right? Sorry, a computer and a tree. That's kind of where we're going to end up because these things are getting exponentially smarter, right? And then I kind of said, well, that's great because now the AI can do cancer research for us. Now the AI can look at really complex problems in the stock market, work out efficiencies, and make us more efficient. Productivity goes through the roof. AI has so many benefits. Or if you like the movies, not so great, it takes over the world and things get a little bit bad for humans. I just put a little thing on there, Skynet. I did this presentation to a bunch of university kids and they did not understand Skynet because that's a reference to a film of the 90s, which is kind of my generation, and they did not understand that. So that's a film called Terminator. Look it up for those that are of a certain age over there, probably. Right? You can replace Skynet with Age of Ultron and the example works, right? And the reason for sharing that is because there are so many unknowns. If agents are automated to go book your flight and pay for it, they are also automated to do some things that probably you don't want them to do. But if they are doing it a billion steps a second, good luck catching them. And we'll get onto ethics and governance in a second, right? But the point is a really interesting one. This is the first time in human history, right, where we as the humans have invented a tool that will surpass us in IQ. Right? The spade did not do that, right? The chisel, whilst very useful, was not cleverer than us. This is the first man-made tool in history that is now smarter than us. And then I say, well, that's interesting and scary at the same time. What if that gets done super fast, more efficiently? So you can see a little thing that I've drawn and said, right, computers and our friends, the processor, the semiconductor, the silicon chip, will have a shelf life. And it's probably in the next 3 to 5 years that we'll say, actually, forget these chips because they're old hat. And the next wave of processing kicks in. Welcome to my friend quantum and quantum computing, which again is like rocket fuel to the processing speeds, right? And quantum is a very real thing today. Not in 5 years, not in 10 years, not in 15 years. There are companies working on quantum computing at scale, solving problems that are today. Okay, so when I show the slide and people say, but quantum computing is decades away, I can assure you it's not. I am working on it. It's a very real thing. Okay, and if you say, okay, the processing power of quantum is exponential, and we have AI agents now working at 1 billion steps a second, and then we supercharge it with quantum, what then? Right? A seismic shift in the way our society once takes place. Because now you've created a tool that you can't even comprehend. Because it's not even working on the laws that we knew of semiconductors. Binary, ones and zeros. Most people understand ones and zeros. Now, if you get into a quantum conversation, I did put Ant-Man in there. I thought I did. And the reason I put Ant-Man, of those of a generation, those Marvel films actually scientifically around quantum mechanics, right? I'm not saying time travel is a thing. I am saying that quantum mechanics is a very real discipline that is driving very real results in quantum computing today. And that processing is changing the game. Yeah, today. Yeah, and for those that are interested in this next wave, after the wave we're in now, which is this kind of, what did we call it? We kind of called it generation of AI, generative AI, to agent bots, to quantum. I'm working with Microsoft on something called Microsoft Quantum Elements. Elements is super compute over cloud using their quantum technologies. You can access it today. It's eye-wateringly expensive, but it's available, right? Super interesting. Quantum will be a thing, right? So I now shift gears because we started the conversation on what is AI, right? Data and processing. We talked about the relevancy of that, the speed in processing power. We had some fun with kind of the lenses you look at it at, and then the stages. And then those stages really take us to the economics and the numbers of what's driving this in the global markets, right? This is a slide I just took to kind of go, you can see the numbers. They're measured in billions. And whether the numbers are 5, 10, 20% accurate, plus or minus, isn't the point, right? There is a real global market being affected because of artificial intelligence today. That's not news to you guys. I know that. But what is interesting is that the numbers are now too big to ignore. So therefore, you conclude one thing. It's not a fad. Yeah. Some technologies in the last 3 to 5 years have come and gone. Metaverse. Let's take my friend Metaverse, right? I think the reason Metaverse failed for the technologists in the room is they couldn't do legs. Nobody figured out legs. It was a very strange thing. Give me the Metaverse, but he's only half a head in the body. Made no sense. Anyway, it is about the economics. The economics of the Metaverse did not seismically change. So there was no economic value generated, which did not then lead to adoption, right? Here, you've got things measured in billions and trillions. Too big to ignore for the financial markets, too big to ignore for financiers, and too big to ignore for governments. And therefore, that is why it is a thing. Yeah? Forget the technology. The numbers dictate its relevancy. Okay? And then I'm going to poke some fun at my friends big tech. Let's look at the economics here. This says the amount of market capitalization, so I know it's a slide you guys would get, that took place last year, right? Oh, and let's measure that in trillions. 6 companies in the trillions. Amount of money generated, $3.8 trillion. The same GDP as North America last year. Yeah. So it is the numbers that make it too hard to ignore. If 6 companies are generating more GDP than North America, you've kind of got to take note, right? That's what's interesting. And Prof G, great YouTube channel, really good content, worth looking at. Not my analysis. And then let's go back to our friends, the processors, right? Now, if I draw an analogy here between what's happening here, and I'll come to it, and the American gold rush, right? And I ask a simple question. Who got rich out of the American gold rush, right? And the answer was, it's not the guys digging for gold. It's the guys that built the infrastructure. Yeah. Who got rich in the dot-com? It wasn't the startups. It was the guys that was powering the internet at the time, the likes of Cisco. Similarly, because history kind of tends to repeat itself, right? You've got now a really interesting thing where the guys that are earning all of those billions are doing so because they have the capital to spend on the infrastructure. That's the right. And if you have a look at that, the 2 guys spending the most on infrastructure, Microsoft and Meta. Yeah. Meta is super exciting. You wouldn't put them as an AI company, but they have the most user base globally using AI agents than any other company on the planet. Yeah. They just roll these out to an existing user base. Super interesting economical model. And if you look at that, by a factor of at least 50% outspending the others. And then when you turn that to earnings and results, you can see that shown in their balance sheet and their stock price. Yeah, it's only going one way. It isn't down. Okay, so I'm having fun here now with showing you the guys that are investing in it or the guys making the money, not necessarily in the applications, we'll get to that, but in the infrastructure. Yeah, and why? Because AI needs next generation processing power. Right? There is a reason why Sam Altman of OpenAI is going around the planet trying to raise a couple of $100 billion for his processing software factory, because he needs to be part of that game too. But right now, he doesn't have the balance sheet these guys do. Let's stay with the economics. Let's shift it slightly to the geopolitics of AI. Go back to our circle, right? Now, everybody knows NVIDIA because they're share price, right? The guys that are comparable to them, these guys, TSMC in Taiwan, really interesting company. Why? Well, I'll tell you why, actually. Because they are protected by the US federal government, right? If China wants to invade Taiwan, which every now and then it wants to do, it's not because it wants to reclaim the island for any other reason than the technical supremacy of these guys. Yeah. The first thing America will do is take that off the table by bombing TSMC. Yeah. Now, that's not one of those crazy conspiracy theories. That's kind of out there and read, right? Because there is a global race for the development of infrastructure in AI. Yeah. The countries, the companies that own the best infrastructure can train the best models. If you can train the best models, you have the best competitive advantage. If you have the best competitive advantage, you will earn trillions in your stock price because you have the most captive audience. And it's as simple as that, right? But it starts with if you have the infrastructure, right? And that's why it's super interesting to see now the CEO of NVIDIA being more important than states' heads of governments, because the numbers dictate that. His company has more in a quarterly earnings than the GDP of 30, 40, 50, 60% of the world. That's quite a scary statement, but the numbers don't lie, right? So again, AI from a geopolitical lens is huge. You know, Sam Altman walks around the world meeting with presidents and prime ministers, right? When the CEO of Google kind of rocks up, he meets heads of state. Really interesting thing. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why? Well, because the numbers speak for themselves. Okay, let's keep this going. So, some of the downsides. These guys. Right, so, here is what is interesting. That we all know heads of state when we see the pictures, right? But if I showed you the faces, and probably most of these are known to you guys in the room because you're of that interest, you've got, I know these guys, but these guys generate more economic value than the G8 put together. And when you say it like that, you go, wait, what? Yeah. And let's draw an interesting thing through this, right? So on the left, you have the CEO of Microsoft, right? The CEO of Microsoft is investing billions per quarter in AI. And you go, why? Well, that's the next wave, right? He is friends with a non-profit making organization that added 20 billion to its balance sheet last quarter. The OpenAI is now valued at $100 billion. Not bad for a not-profit that didn't exist 5 years ago. Okay? Who is then friends with my friend Mustafa Suleyman, head of AI at Microsoft. Right? Super interesting character. He lives in London, right? Microsoft offered him a job as head of AI. He said, no, thank you. I live in London and you guys are in Redmond. He said, no problem. We will move all of Microsoft's global AI capability to you. You stay where you are. That's how good he is. Yeah. Sundar, head of Google and Alphabet. Don't worry about Google. Have a look what Alphabet are doing in AI, and it will blow your mind, right? A little homework for those that are interested. And then obviously, Jensen, CEO of NVIDIA, who talks about processing power enough today, right? But it's really interesting when you see such seismic influence in economic terms into 6 very undemocratically led people, right? Super interesting. And I could add Elon to this, right? And there are notable exceptions on the infrastructure side too. But I'm just doing it to show you a interesting perspective on a world order driven by the economics, not the politics of AI. Yeah. And this is what I want you to think about it. What is it that these guys are doing that are fundamentally impacting the things that you want to do in AI, right? That's the point. Now, I play a little game with my graduates and I say, tell me what this slide means, right? And for the interest of time, I'll tell you. You can see some companies and organizations you all know, right? The number at the bottom is in months, okay? And the statistic is the number of months it took to get to 100 million users, okay? Uber took 17 months to get to 100 million users. It took GPT 2. The change and the speed of AI is unprecedented globally. Yeah. So as you start doing your AI initiatives, as you expand the way you look at AI, you've got to go, well, everyone understands it, right? The time it took people to understand ride sharing was measured in years, right? The time it took people to understand GPT was measured in days. We all got it globally in any language. I was messing around GPT-4o in Urdu. It's amazing. And I was just going, wow, it's there today, multi-language. Yeah. It shows you where we are today, okay? Let me just now wrap up with where we are going. So go back to our little diagram of, we understand these concepts now of what AI is comprised of. Where will it go? Well, a couple of guesses on my part. So at the moment, AI doesn't do a great job in remembering what you did last week. When you had that chat with it last week, you know, last week I said, hey, can you just find me the strategy for this thing? Great, it did an okay job. Then now I have to start again and say, hey, can you write this thing, right? An infinite context window simply means that remember that interaction and go, oh, do you want to link it to that? Because this bit is important and this is how you might want to do it. Yes? So the context of what you want from the AI is remained with it. Yeah? Super helpful, super scary. but it means it will just know you and learn from you. Yeah. And if you amplify that by it's doing that another 50 billion times with 50 billion other people, it's quite an interesting place to be, right? So infinite context windows, really interesting. We're getting there. The next one is speech to action. Actually, for those that have GPT-4o on their phone, it's already there. Google already have it in Gemini, right? So speech, go do something, and our connection with agents means that it will be done, right? We're saying, go do this for me. Okay, I will go do it for you, right? We had a really interesting development in the use of digital currencies, Bitcoin, for AI agents to go do that transaction for you, right? So now you're having an agent, I'm a bot just doing travel stuff, talking to another bot that is my banking bot. My banking bot actually can take transactions using a form of Bitcoin and do a transaction this way. All done at speed with zero in human intervention, okay? So, speech to action, agency. Put these three together, you've got AI that remembers you from last week, able to transact with you in any which way you like, multi-language, to deliver the service that you wanted by you just telling it to, yeah? More responsive than your children, right? Scary, right? Because it'll just go do it. And it'll go do that at 59 billion and some other times for all the people at the same time, right? Because that's the amount of compute storage and scale we've built in the system, okay? So we're doing that and we go, well, where all does that lead to? I have no idea where it all leads to, but an interesting development that's coming next is the use of robots, humanoid-based agents that will do the things we need them to do. For those that haven't looked at it, Optimus is by Tesla. It is scary and amazing at the same time. It's built today, go take a look, okay? Because now you're saying you can really affect the next evolution in human history and revolution by having robots on pretty much everything, doing everything at an IQ that is super intelligent and they don't get tired, right? Or have a union, or worry about the politics, right? Interesting, right? And so that led me to, let me give you the example of Optimus, because I've given you, and I haven't done a presentation on AI, and I can't not mention Elon Musk. Super interesting guy, don't do his politics, but here's what's good about this company called Tesla. Right in the bottom corner, Tesla are just doing some interesting things around battery technology. That's what they're doing. Elon doesn't regard Tesla as an automotive company at all, right? In the same way, SpaceX is just doing some really interesting things around solar. He's not really worried about the scientific progress in space flight. Yeah. And they are building companies with point expertise to deliver on Optimus. That's the point. So now you've got a robot with the best-in-class energy technology, best-in-class AI. Grok will be formidable as their large language model. We haven't touched on LLMs. We will do in the second half of the session. But for today, know that, you know, there is models out there that are phenomenally good and free. Yeah. We've talked a lot about the private ones of OpenAI a lot. I'm going to switch that and say Grok, Llama, super interesting free models for every one of you to experiment with today, right? Okay. But they're building towards Optimus. So look, I'm slightly over time, and I apologize for that, but I just wanted to set the context in the first half of this session around this thing called AI, right? The journey we've been on in 45 minutes is that we've talked about AI not being new. We've talked about a interesting economic view of AI, yeah? We've looked at it from a philosophical lens, and we all understand now the rudimentary element parts in data and processing. And we spent a little bit of time understanding why processing is important, right? So we've kind of covered, you know, the what, where, how of AI in the last 45 minutes, if that clock's right, with a view to step into a more detailed conversation in the second half around what it means from a finance and banking sector perspective. So more now bringing it into your worlds of what this means, right? So with that, I think we'll take a little break. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Thank you, Shabazz. I think you turned out better. We'll take 25 minutes break for namaz and tea, and then we'll come back and the focus will be on banking and finance, and we have 1 hour planned for Q&A. So, you'll get to ask a lot of questions, hopefully. Yeah, let's take a 25 minutes break and then come back, rejoin around 5:20, possible. Thank you.
Domain of the CFO. So let's talk at the industry. Let's talk big picture things. And then we'll start to use some examples and case studies from what we're seeing. So again, we'll go from big to small, okay? In doing so, any questions, please feel free. Okay, so let's start with this term transformation, right? Because you guys have been on a transformational journey for a long time, right? Now, here's what's really interesting, right? Because I meet with people and they say, we need to do digital transformation. I say, great. Now, actually, you wouldn't do analog transformation anymore, right? So take the word digital as read. Now, actually, let's make it more modern and apply an AI first mindset to your transformation, okay? And that's the first point. Everything you do going forward should be with a mindset of what does this mean for me in a post-AI world, right? Because your premise then, your starting point is valid, right? If you start with the term digital, you're already 5 years out of date. So now let's talk about finance transformation with an AI first mindset. Yeah. And you'll see the differences as we start to highlight what these are. Okay. Now, in doing so, what I've done is I've created a little framework on the right, which basically says, here are the technologies that will come back to AI technologies that are implementable, enabling of the thing that you're looking at. So let's just spend a moment talking about some of these technologies, because in one way, shape, or form or another, they will start to be relevant to the things that you're doing in your AI first mindset. Okay? One thing AI is really good at, because we talked about generating something here, is content generation. So in multiple use cases, being able to create that contract, that relationship management document, that policy guide, that email is an efficiency conversation because it will create it in seconds. I am shameless now in my emails. The AI writes my emails. And it does so because it is an efficiency and productivity gain on my part, right? And that's the AI first mindset we now wish to move to. For those that you remember, when we did digital transformation and we started the mass use of email, people used to write on the email, please don't print this out, because the mindset was of a memo and an email became a replacement to the memo, right? Similarly, AI is doing a similar thing, right? It's saying, I've got this, no need for you to write this. So content generation is one technology that we'll come back to, okay? Let's have a look at the next one. So reading of information at scale and speed. Send the AI to look at all of the expense reports for the last 10 years in these PDFs that I had no time to do. Extrapolate the main findings and come back to me and tell me what you see. It will do that task in minutes, less than a minute. So now you're extracting something, right? And whilst we've been able to do that before, you're doing it on data that you had to put into a database. Now you're saying, go look at the expense receipt photo that I sent. So now the difference is you are looking at unstructured content, videos, photos, things that just you would have to transcribe in the old one. Again, a efficiency discussion, right? Okay. Chatbots. I love chatbots. Chatbots are not new. We've had those in contact centers forever. Really annoying things that don't work, and you just say, give me a human being, right? The world over, they were deployed in contact centers to just annoy people, right? They didn't work. But now we're getting to a really interesting point where smart is smart. A whole lot smarter than before. And actually, some cases, when done properly, these chatbots are actually indistinguishable to a human. And you don't even know you're talking to a bit of code. So we're getting to a point now where smart chatbots can provide excellent customer service, both within and external to your organization. Okay, so that's the use case number 3, technology. Number 4, language. The good thing about the technologies that we use, they don't differentiate between languages. So out of the gate, Urdu and English and Japanese is all fine, right? To varying levels of degree of sophistication. I'll put a small asterisk on that statement, but it's available. So now multi-language is a thing, okay? A real thing. Not just in text, but in speech as well. And then finally, we were talking in the break about the roles of, careers of the future. It will be really interesting to see how the developer and technology community respond to this technology. In a world of GPT and Claude, what is the role of a developer? Super interesting question. When Claude can write the code in seconds, what is the role of a developer? Similarly, if the same application can write you the report you need, it is an efficiency saver. Okay, so I put this framework up at the start of the conversation to help you contextualize the 5 most commonly used of AI technology in a business context. Okay, and we'll come back to those 5 and say, aha, that's where I'll use a chatbot. Or this is really good for information extraction at scale. Or haha, this is something I can do now in multi-language. So your roles are going to evolve with the use of these tools. Okay. The second thing I'll do is talk about the roles you guys have in relation to this technology. Right. One thing that's been really interesting over my career is that when you boil down success, it was never around the technology. The technology has come and gone. But the way that people have understood the use of the technology as a tool and supplemented it with good old-fashioned communication skills and empathy and creating win scenarios is where the technology has really thrived. Yeah, whilst important, it is a tool. And for those of you guys doing projects, it is not the most important aspect of your project. Yeah, project management hasn't gone away yet. Yeah, the importance of adhering to your numbers hasn't gone away. So there are really important parts of traditional transformation ingredients that are still relevant in this conversation. Okay, so while I'm going to talk about leading technology, I'm going to caveat that with these other skills are still required. Yeah, I just had a very interesting conversation about what are the skills of the CFO in the future, right? I'd go empathy, integrity, respect. They haven't gone away because AI's come. And in fact, probably more in demand. Oh. Okay, so what does that mean? If you take those 5 use cases, this isn't a slide you're meant to read. It's a slide to say there are now many many AI techniques available. If you go back to aspects of machine learning that we talked about, model development that we talked about, natural language processing, computer vision we talked about, the industry has already said, aha, we know how to use these. And has already created a framework of the techniques technologists will use to give you the answer that you need. That means you are not reinventing the wheel. So key message number 2, if the first one is about your humanistic aspects, will be more required than less. Key message number 2 is the industry has already solved these for you. There are already frameworks for AI adoption in your industry today that you can look at. These techniques are fairly mature. No need to reinvent the wheel. Okay? Based on that, we can take it one step more forward. And we can say that all of those technologies will start to enable these 4 core use cases. And everything we do will ultimately map to these kind of demands within your organization. Okay, so let's take a moment here. If you talk about monitoring, monitoring is huge. And the ability for a tool to monitor in real time and to alert you of change and to forecast and predict change and to do something important with that information is highly valuable in an organization. So the ability to monitor proactively, smart, with the ability then to do something with that. Now go take this information and process it and send it to these systems so the next person's decision is easier to do, right? So the decision making is now much more than before. So as we talked about in the first session about the era of AI going from tell me something to do something. Welcome to processing. We then say against that, you guys have all been involved in a form of predictive analytics for the last number of years. This is not new. The thing that has changed is the barrier to entry, the speed and scale. Predictive analytics was once very expensive. Now it is not. And now it's table stakes. It's there, it's easy, and you know, the data scientists or the analysts in your organizations know how to do that. If they don't, just ask Copilot. It's embedded into Excel. It's doing it for you, right? So the tools are already emerging, okay? And then go write me the report. Don't alert me that you've seen something. Don't do anything for historical information. Show me the future and show me the implication of that. So the generation. Now, once you start to see the efficiencies in these kinds of capabilities, you will see a new role of the CFO. Because now you are more adaptable, agile, and efficient. And that's what AI is giving you at the core, right? It's those 3 characteristics that within any organization will start to lead to the benefits that an organization needs. Speed and adaptability are key, right? But so is trust and accuracy. So I'll come on to a few more of those in a second, all right? Now, if we can accept that those things are enabled by AI, you can see at the bottom some examples that we'll step into as use cases a little later. But now this is kind of your world, not mine. But you can see the link, right? You can see how AI is an enabling capabilities that are driving those sorts of examples in your respective organizations. So when someone asks me, what is the relevancy of all of this technology in your profession? You can now start to see it. So I would suggest it's relevant. Okay. So I did this slide to now go, okay, let's have a look at that from 3 domains. So let's start with customer services. Now, knowing we can process data faster, knowing that we can have a more intelligent view of the customer affords us enhanced customer service capabilities, right? And you can start to see that as part of this layering. And what I'm saying to you is that if we start top level, is AI relevant? Yes. What are the candidate capabilities? Well, more information on demand to show you something. Customer services is a prime example, right? Similarly, through that, you can start to talk about your growth agenda, because now you have information you didn't have before. So how to tailor that for your customers becomes really, really relevant. And in an era of hyper-personalization, it's the AI that's giving you the data points, not your business analyst who's crunching the numbers, spending weeks doing something for you, and then really struggling to do that at scale, right? Hyper-personalization is a sweet spot for technologies grounded in AI, like machine learning, like natural language processing. That's what it does, okay? Risk and compliance, like I say, I can't have slides around fine, let's not talk about risk and compliance. I'll do that a bit more later on, but it's a super relevant topic, super interesting when you start to look at it from a legislative perspective too, okay? So if you don't mind, I won't go on to those, but you can kind of read the things around managing risk better because you are more informed. That's the principal statement there, yeah? I'll come into that. Okay, right. So we created a framework, 5 technologies, right? And now what we're saying is these 5 technologies are really enabling some interesting disciplines, domains, not yet use cases, we're going to get to use cases. But if you take one example, let's take risk management. The ability to manage risk in real time becomes a feature of the technology you start to employ, right? Let's take another one. Client servicing, sentiment analysis. Now you're able to understand the temperature of a customer in a much more real-time, dynamic way at scale. Because go back to our joke around the tree and the computer, right? It can do this for your customer base, not of one individual, but all individuals, because scale is a feature of AI. Yeah, it needs that data. And just finally, let's pick another one. Actually, summary creation in the bottom for MI reporting. One of the things, let's go back to our technologies, LLMs do really well is create content. So the ability to summarize content is just what it does. So tell me what's important about a 200-page report. Tell me how I need to add to it, and tell me what needs to be done. You know, you can do that today using GPT as an example, right? But now to be able to do it within the enterprise on data you hold is the use case that you can see starting to form, right? Okay, this slide is not meant to be read. It's a slide that says there is a global framework of use cases already identified for your organizations, right? And you just need to leverage it. What it says is that in the middle, there's a core technology. That technology is driving certain capabilities. Those capabilities map to these use cases at the extreme end of the circle in these domains of marketing and sales, in et cetera, right? And the reason I show this slide is to say to you that your acceleration of learning in AI will be based on the reuse of all of this industry material. You don't have to reinvent it, right? You can just say that this is right. And the tier one, the consulting firms, the technology firms have already defined this. You know, I was having a very nice discussion about SAP. SAP has defined a version of this, of what HANA does in terms of the use cases it enables out of the box using their large language model. If you are an SAP environment, you don't need to go and reinvent the wheel. It's there. Similarly for Oracle, similarly for all the other guys, right? They have this, use it. It forms the best way to get going. Yeah. And more importantly, it's a standardized way of getting going. Yeah. Low cost effective because the barrier to entry this is low. Why? Because you've already paid for the organizational licenses. You've already got it. You just now need to go figure out what you do with it. Okay. These use cases are really, really interesting. And I'm not going to read them out, but I'm going to talk about the real implications of this. So let's take one thing. wealth management. Let's say in wealth management, in banking, how is AI redefining it? Well, it's redefining it because it can do predictive modeling. Great, wonderful. That is a 1, 2, 3 step. Okay. Now, the really interesting thing is the so what does that mean for me? The fact that I can predict somebody's net wealth in 3 years based on an algorithm that was created by the AI is all well and good, right? But what I then go do with that information and how that information is linked to the process tangential to that, account management becomes the so what. If I can do something with it and now make the account relationship manager more informed of predictive wealth, that person is now more armed to do something. And if that account management thing can say, actually, dynamic credit limits is a thing, you've now got a value chain starting to emerge. And that value chain is where the benefits of automating, efficiency, increased sophistication result in your so what. That's your business case. The business case for adoption often isn't in one thing. It's the implementation of a capability that enables multiple things. And when you look at that, the ROI on the investment in the technology, which is at the cutting edge and expensive and has lots of needs to it, starts to justify itself. And if you take 5 of those boxes, link them together, and call it your AI transformation journey, you start to create a programmatic way of moving forward. Yeah. Again, these use cases are industry standard. You can see them, you can touch them with technologies that are using them. But that is not the so what I want to show you. The so what is how you get going. And good old-fashioned programmatic project management, portfolio management steps allow you to do that. Good old-fashioned business cases that say this is the investment I need at a CFO level to do that, and justify it at the board level, and then bring that down.
Data from historical database or historical sources. When you talk about predictive modeling, how does that it relates the historical data to future when the external circumstances keep on changing?
Oh, great question. So the question is about how we do predictive analytics, right? And how the models know that tomorrow I might have a 5% increase in my productivity or minus 10% in my P&L. The answer is in a couple of ways. For the data scientists, they use applied algorithms. So there's industry standard ways of measuring this. So taking the data, applying a calculation, an algorithm that gives them an output, right? So what data scientists do, they know the right mathematical equation, it's called algorithms, to use to give that output, okay? And what they'll do is they'll do that based on the data they have, right? So they'll go take some historical data, run the algorithm, and that gives an output at the most simplistic level. Yeah.
Like AI is the future and it's being used to very much effective use. My question is that in real world, things or affairs might not move the way they have moved historically. So how successful is the predictive model in this scenario?
Great question. And it's contextual to every specific example. You're into things like the quality of the data determines the quality of the accuracy. Now, the accuracy is the job of the data scientist to improve, right? So if you get a forecast model that has an error of 50%, that's garbage. That's like flipping a coin, right? If you have a model that is 99% accurate because it's trained on data that is valid and applied industry calculations and tested with other models, you increase its predictable validity. right? So the role of a good data scientist is to understand how to improve the accuracy of the results. And that's why they get paid the money they get and have the value industry they have, because that's some clever maths.
What's the recent example?
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that are beyond control,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah. And so the more sophisticated.
So how successful, actually, can you give an example
Yeah.
of a corporation, a real time that, you know, they may prepare forecasts and how accurate those forecasts were? Or are there examples where these predictive models failed?
Yes. So the question is about how predictive analytics is being used in the real world, right? You know, what is its results? How successful? How unsuccessful, right? And I think it's a really, really valid question. I think the way to answer it without having specific data points to hand is to go, every organization is on a journey to improve the accuracy, right? You know, there are organizations that do that superbly well, and there are ones that are learning, right? It doesn't make the learning journey any less valid, right? I think forecasting is whilst it is a science, it is hugely complicated, right? And requires lots of unknowns. Forecasting the weather has been a scientific challenge for decades, right? With accuracy, right? And with precision, right? Similarly, for forecasting in financial markets is equally complex and requires lots and lots and lots of skill, right? Not organizations do it well, some do it better than others, and it's a journey. But it doesn't mean it's a journey you can't take because you haven't done it before. Yeah. But the use, and actually this is a really good point about the future skills required to get to the capabilities that you might need. So if you need to do predictive analytics, advanced analytics, you may need a data scientist. Let's take that as a role, a new role within your finance team, in your finance function. That's not been where, you know, you might have had that person. So you might need to create a new role to give you the capability you need. You might say, actually, to do that, the data scientist now needs data engineers, people who go and get and find the data and make it worth doing. That's another role. That role might not sit in finance, it might sit in the technology teams. So you are now looking at a way of enabling a new capability with new skills required. And there are new skills required. So another example of a new role that's kind of popped up in the last 2 years is the role of a prompt engineer, somebody who can work with the large language models to extrapolate value. 3 years ago, nobody heard the term. 5 years ago, LLMs weren't in mainstream use. Now, there's a role that is super valued because it's the one person in an organization that can extract meaning out of the technology. New skills are required. New skills supplement the traditional skills, not replace. Yeah, that investment case is what makes this important, what makes linking these things, because now you're saying, I need 3 new different roles within my organization. Well, how do you fund that? Your transformation has to have an ROI that funds it. And you do that by saying the benefit of that is I will have a predictive capability that will better do customer management. And if I can increase my customer base by 5% through the use of these capabilities, I then have something that pays for itself. Yeah, and that's why the business case is super important for all of this stuff, right? How do I ensure that I have an investment that's valid? Yeah. Thank you. Great question. What I started then to do, because I think customer services is a very simple one to kind of build a conversation around, I've said, look, the role in banking, let's take as an example, the type of banking processes along the top, and say, what does the person need to do? And how does the technology at the bottom help that process? So now we can create a thread between something really interesting. the traditional process that needs to get done, improve customer service, the role the person has, understanding customer pain points, and how the technology can help. So there is now a fairly mature set of tools, techniques that say, if I do probability of churn, I know that this customer demographic, this profile, is probably not going to be my customer in 18 months. Now, what do I do with that information is the role of the responsibility of this relationship manager, this account director. This account director now has a responsibility. Do I invest in this or not? But actually, I've been given the information that I didn't have 10 minutes ago, right? So what we're seeing is the use of the technology at the bottom to inform the humanistic behavior that drives the process along the top that has always been there. You're just doing it in a more informed, organized, proactive way. Yeah, because the first two rows in that table existed before AI came along, right? And so the discussion I wish to nurture is to say, you're not doing anything particularly new right at this stage, you're just enhancing your ability to do it. You're allowing that relationship manager to be more effective because they're armed now with information that they didn't have before. Yeah. Simple example. Okay. Some of the considerations we're now going to start to get into. So if you look at the industry, these in itself are huge topics, right? But what does AI and the use of these tools we're starting to identify, right, mean for privacy, right? What does it mean? So let's take a moment on the ethical one, because I think that's a superb introduction into an area of AI we not talked about, which is just because I can, should I do it? And now if you apply that statement to a bot who's tasked with a target, should it do it? If we go, well, that bot is doing this thing at a billionth of a second, and I don't know what it did, should I allow it to do it? And if it's done it and it's too late and it's sent instructions elsewhere, what is the responsibility on me? So now there are some ethical positions you have to consider as you start to implement the technology in question. And the simple should I, because I can, is a very interesting place to start. The ethics of AI is a 3-hour lecture in itself, but just to get you guys thinking about the implications of hyper automation, where you don't know what it's doing because all of this is a black box, is really profound. Factual, let's just touch on that. Just because the computer said the answer is 42, it doesn't mean the answer is correct. Yeah. And what you have in the industry is your point about the accuracy of the model. Is it right? And especially if you apply that to non-quantifiable topics, right? Where it's more subjective. Actually, AI really struggles on some of those basics. And it will get to an answer that's wrong because it's kind of made it up. But it said it with so much authority, you've gone, that must be true, right? And therefore, that hallucination is a risk in the industry. Because just because the computer said it, we have learned and programmed ourselves to think it's true, it's right. But there are many, many things you can do to an LLM as sophisticated as GPT or Gemini that will trip it up. There are very simple questions you can ask it, because its principle, the way it interprets that, is wrong, right? And it will come up with a hallucinated answer. You can have fun with that. But when you're applying that to mission critical operations in your business, you can't have or afford hallucinations. So you have to consider the impact of that. So what I wanted you to do is say, it's not all roses, right? It's not all plain sailing. If you want to get the benefits of a customer churn capability that can tell you how customers are leaving your organization, you have to address some of the challenges inherent with developing that capability. Privacy is one. The ethical dimension is another. The factual is another. The technical limitations, do I have the data even to be able to train the model on that question, is another, right? The lack of data is a real problem in the accuracy of the AI in the industry, irrespective of which industry, right? Not having sufficient data at the quality required, at the scale needed to get to the results that are rock solid is really, really hard, right? So you have to think about, how do I do that, right? Data quality is a problem, because the old adage of rubbish in, rubbish out really still applies to AI. Because if you train a model on actually rubbish data, don't expect amazing result. Right? I did promise a slide on controls. and I did that because I wanted to really say, look, the way you need to look at AI and the way AI is driving a risk conversation is really important, right? And so in this, we're starting to look at new controls that you may not had to think about before. And these controls require a different mindset. You know, we might have done some of these security ones around cyber. We might have done some of the ones around data leakage, but we haven't done them in the context of that predictive churn model that you've just put in, right? So there is a newness to the controls and the control framework you need to apply to ensure robustness, to ensure validity, to ensure accuracy, yeah? So AI is coming along and asking of the organization, do you have all the checks and balances in place? And the answer is probably no, because there are new checks and balances. And that requires a different mindset, yeah? And if you look at some of these risks, these are new. You know, the human misuse of an AI isn't a risk somebody was talking about 5 years ago. But if you look at some of the most high-profile misuses of AI in that gets reported, it's the human doing something a little bit not great that is resulting in the action taken, right? So you have to go, how do we control the human element of the AI output? Very interesting topic. So this is meant to represent a shift in the way you think about the management of AI, right? The practical examples is what we're trying to talk about here that allow you to go, wait a minute. Just because I can, should I do this? Yeah. And it's a really profound statement, question that you should ask when you're looking at AI that can do computations in the billions, in the seconds that you don't even know what's going on with, right? It is an industry problem. It is something you should think about. I'm going to speed up a little bit because I said I'd stop at Maghrib. So I've got about 15 minutes. So I'm going to go through these a little bit faster. These slides will be made available. I don't mind sharing this. It's content for you guys to go through in your own time. But I do want to stop at Maghrib. So let's talk about, please.
Are these organizational controls or controls specifically related to AI operations?
Both.
Both of them?
Both. Yeah, because, you know, one doesn't go without the other, right? Because actually, if I think about AI, I think about that at the organizational enterprise level. It's not an IT problem. Yeah, I think technology has a part to play in showing certain controls, but I think actually this is a boardroom conversation. This is an executive level discussion about, do I have sufficient guardrails in place for the technology I'm putting in? And that goes right to the top table. All right. let's have a look at the regulatory framework. And I put this slide in actually to debunk it, right? And the reason I do that is all of these regulatory environments, nations are saying we need all these acts. Everybody's running around saying we need an AI Act. Nobody is able to enforce anything, because if you're the size of Microsoft, Google, etc., you don't care. You play a different game, right? And I mean that with the greatest respect to those organizations. They are world-class organizations doing wonderful things. This has been recorded. a little joke, a little joke. And Microsoft for my friends, so hi Microsoft, right? And the time it takes to affect regulation is already outdated by the time it's passed. These tech giants are moving at a faster speed, and a regulation in one jurisdiction does not impact another. So when you have an operation in multiple global locations, you're good. When you're the size of Meta and the federal government tells you to come speak and you say no, they say, okay. That's the reality of the regulation. It's a real challenge for for the regulators to work out how to do AI. It's not to say they can't, it's not to say they won't get there, but the problem and challenge you have today is that big tech is way bigger than big regulation. Okay. So what I started to do down the middle column is start to quantify some of the benefits that you can start to see when we talk about some of the efficiencies, some of the opportunities that we have, okay? I won't belabor this slide in the interest of time because I'll show you them in the use cases in question. Okay. One of the things you need to do is actually talk about this AI transformation for the organization from a finance lens using a technique around target operating model. What is the design of the organization that needs to take place to optimize the use of AI, right? So you need to purposely design an organization that is able to do some of the things in that black row. So is my workforce optimized? Means, do I have the right skills? If you look at it on the other end, you know, do I have the right responsibilities in place? Do I have the organizational structure? So I will get into a few slides that talk about the implication on the organization, how it operates, what it should look like to really enable an AI-first transformation, okay? In the same way, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we started to say digital transformation. And we started to say there's a role for a chief digital officer. And we started to say data is important. And the evolution of that is AI is important. So AI transformation. And the way we manage all of this data now looks like this. It's an evolution of that journey that you've already been on. So you can start to see a shift from the left, where I talk about the size and prioritization of certain capabilities required under digital transformation and how that changes for an AI-first related conversation. You can see some capabilities deprioritized. You can see some enhanced. And most telling in this is the ability to be more strategic because of the use of AI to automate tasks and give you something you didn't have before, right? So you can see inherently an organization has to structurally change to optimize the use of AI, right? And that design has to be purposeful, meaningful, and well laid out. And you will see some skills will naturally go away and some repeat. Because actually reporting and analytics, you go, well, sure, that's important. But actually in an AI first world, when that can be automated and just asked of the AI and pushed onto your mobile phone, the capability is done. It's gone, right? The ability to visualize it in 10 different ways is automatic. So the need for a model and a visualizer is actually reduced. So the technologies, and sorry for the Power BI guys there, I just really what I said. Dashboarding is still important. Uh, so you have to look at, the capabilities in the future and the organization structure that mirrors that capability need. It will change, within an organization context, sure, but you can see it now differ. And if you were to do an organization of 15 years ago, pre-digital transformation, you'd see a very different shift. Yeah. So organizations need to change to map to the capabilities required, right? That design is purposeful and has to be driven from a strategic lens. What that does, just as an illustrative point, you can see within an organization, certain roles decrease time spent on certain tasks, right? And this is just an illustration, an example of, let's take a financial operation, accounts payable, and the type of activity that would reduce through the implementation of AI, leading to a 30–40% efficiency improvement. If you take these efficiencies down at the bottom as the reason for doing the AI transformation, you've now got a quantifiable business case for the investment needed for the future. Yeah, it's in those numbers that, your business case is predicated, because it is in that automation and efficiency realization that the value exists. Right, I'm only going to pick a few case studies because I will finish in 6 minutes. So what we've done is said that there are certain specific, measurable uses of AI, right? I'm going to just highlight a few so you can see now from when we started this journey 3 hours ago to say, what is AI? To now, if you look at transact to record, a generative AI model being able to do these things. And let's just take one as an example. So machine learning is able to look at the accounting rules and give you some insight, a recommendation on how you treat the thing in front of you, right? Which, going back to our 5 capabilities of AI, is an information extraction use case. Yeah. But it's giving you that in real time at speed upon request. Okay. Let's take another example. Predictive analytics will allow for better improvement of results. Now, that predictive analytics, as we talked about in the first part of the section, is just data being processed at scale to give you information that you didn't see before through the use of a generative AI model. Right? And that automation is the new, right? Similarly, some more use cases. Now, in these use cases, I think what is really interesting is, let me switch to this one as an example. Now, in this example of a anonymized organization that has looked at AI and have done that for financial statement analysis, what I've done in the top right is put a little key for the technologies in our Venn diagram from before that are now being used to do it. So I've just dotted on the top the different types of AI. Because as you'll appreciate in our discussion, AI is not a one thing. It is many things. And here we're using generative AI. Here we're using machine learning. Here we're using natural language processing. So we're using many different types of AI in several techniques that we started off this section with showing you to create this result. Okay, so it shows you how AI has evolved now to do a very specific use case, financial statement analysis, using modern technologies in a workflow step that you could all understand. Yeah, this is today implemented real. Okay, now if you extrapolate that one step further and say, if I was to create a AI first transformation of my organization, And if I looked at financial statement analysis as one thing I wanted to do on my journey, you could put a business case to that investment. You could put a ROI to that investment, and you could show the benefits of doing it, right? You could take that efficiency, savings, and benefits from doing this and put it into the next one, the hiring of a data scientist. You could take the hiring data scientist who builds that churn model and put it into the next one. So the roadmap you create can be self-funding based on certain starting points you have within your organization. It doesn't need millions of dollars up front to do AI, right? And similarly, things in banking, know your customer. Again, the technologies that we can use are available to drive those conversations, right? So I'm nearly up at time, so I'm just going to show you a few examples of what these look like. Again, lending operations, cost to serve, and then let me finish on some considerations of barriers to entry. So when we talk about doing this and those use cases that I went through super fast, here are the things that are challenges to consider, because I didn't want you kind of all going away thinking, this is super easy and we're going to do it tomorrow. There are real world application and challenges to doing this, right? There is a global skill shortage, right? You know, that's why data scientists command the money they do. That's why prompt engineers are highly valued. That's why data engineering is having a renaissance, right? There is skills to this. There's also this thing about data. You know, the first thing we did this afternoon is say you need lots of data. So your organizational data may or not be ready for AI, right? You need lots of data, and it has to be of good quality, and it has to be accurate, and it has to be available. If not, you're going to see limited results, okay? And I think the cultural one is interesting. The cultural one, I live and work in Saudi Arabia. Now, the cultural resistance to AI is pretty minimal. They have bought in. But when I go back to the UK and I see the legislative barriers to this stuff, people talking about policy and people talking about non-sharing of data and all of the protectionism that goes around roles created by unionism, they're not going to move anywhere fast. And countries where that doesn't exist, they will move fast. And the development of the skills and learning they get in the next 3 years, as other countries are stuck in that paralysis, is going to be tangible and the places where AI will thrive. Okay. Wonderful. So I'm going to leave it there. We're happy to share this material. I've gone through it super fast just in the interest of time because I wanted to finish for Maghrib. But, you know, in the Q&A, if there's any questions, if there's anything that you want to discuss, absolutely fine. Okay.
So thank you, Shabazz. Very useful. So don't worry about the use cases. We're gonna discuss in detail when we have Q&A. So that's why we have 1 hour. So you can come up with your problem within your organization, and hopefully, Shabazz will be able to answer how we can resolve those problems, or help you with AI and technology. But then data is key, and I'll be asking some questions to him around the use cases. So we'll discuss some of the use cases in Q&A. We'll take 20 minutes break from Maghrib, and then we'll rejoin to the Q&A. For those who are available online, you can ask questions in the chat, and they will reach to my mobile and ask those questions to Shabazz, inshallah. So see you guys in 20 minutes. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Welcome back. Must thank Shabazz for a wonderful job he has done. It was very insightful. I don't think you could have done any better, Shabazz. So big round of applause for him. Okay. So depending on how interacting session we create, and how many questions we get. So we have an hour. It could be next 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 45 minutes, depends on how many questions we have for him. Feel free to ask real-time problems. you're facing in your organization, and he'll try to answer. If he doesn't know the answer, we'll come back to you. Right. So let's start. So I will. I've created a lot of questions using Gen AI, so I'll come up over there. So when Shabazz was saying, very interesting fact, when he was saying he doesn't know anything about finance, he was very humble. So let me tell you a very interesting fact. Shabazz is a qualified chartered accountant from ICW.
Not practicing.
Not practicing. But very soon he realized that's not my field. Okay, so he, of course, he switched. He did computer degree. So let me ask the first question, Shabazz. I think most of us, the accountants sitting here, and I think I have one question online from the audience also. How was your journey from, you started your career as an accountant in Deloitte, right? So it's very soon you realize, I want to use a strong word. You found auditing very boring. And then you, from there, for the past 25 years, you've been consulting technology. Did you have to do a computer degree? What were the other challenges you have faced? And what was your journey? So I think that would be quite inspiring for a lot of us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So to put some context to the story, so I did an accountancy degree. I graduated in 1997. So to give you a context, a long time ago. And I started my career in UK with Deloitte & Touche, training as a chartered accountant. But at the time, this internet thing came out. And at the time, it was .com this, startup that. And that fascinated me. It fascinated me because it was changing everything. And it caught me in my career where I was just so interested in what was coming next. And I remember this like yesterday, that I was a trainee accountant at Deloitte & Touche, going out and doing stock takes, but reading the tech news. And I was catching all this stuff on something called Netscape, right? And I was learning and reading this completely different world. And the advantage of Big Four when I was training is you're all in the same building. So I used to go up and speak to the consultant guys and go, what do you do? And how do I do it? And I was just so interested in the work they were doing around helping internet startups. And so one day I convinced a manager to let me be on their project. Let me help you. I understand this world. I didn't understand this world, but I basically convinced somebody to give me a little bit of that. And from that, I was upon, and I remember my first project was a .com startup, an online book publisher, where nobody really understood the business model. But because I'd been interested in this area, I understood the business model and therefore some of the technology behind it. So I was a very bad accountant with good technical understanding. And that led me on to a different path. I think I fell into management consulting as a stepping stone from accountancy. And I did that simply because of the way my brain was wired about what is next. And I've largely spent my career at that intersection of what is next. And I think that consulting career is where I've just thrived because my brain is wired to go, what is next? I think my training in accountancy was pivotal to that because I understand the business world. I can talk TCV, I can talk ROIs. At one point, I even remembered certain accounting standards that in the fullness of time I've forgotten, but Morse and I had a really good conversation around FRS 9 because it came back to me. So the grounding is there as an accountant, which is important because I understand the business world. If you understand the business world, you can apply the technology to it. You can apply the conversations at a boardroom level that are relevant, right? So everything you guys have done is highly valuable. And AI is not taking that away anytime soon, right? My career then just evolved by saying, okay, how do I do more in this space? And so at the time, I was fortunate enough to be given study leave to do my master's. My master's was in computer science. I did get technical. I did then grow up at Deloitte being a technical consultant. At then one point, I wasn't technical because the more senior you go, you don't need to be technical. I am not technical now. And I often joke about the technologies I trained in, you will find in museums. That's okay. I don't need to learn the technologies of today because they will be redundant tomorrow. But what I do need to be able to do is apply that business grounding I got in the context of the problem I'm solving today, using the technology I understand that's available. And that is my career, right? But I think if I just give you guys one credit is, please, your grounding in understanding the business world is hyper relevant. And that doesn't go away anytime soon.
Okay, thank you. So I have plenty of questions I can ask, and let's give audience an opportunity to, any questions? I keep on asking.
Thank you very much. Actually, as far as the CFO role is concerned, in artificial intelligence, lately we got an assignment from another jurisdiction of probably US. And there was something which we came to know that, CFO also working with the AI thing. But there are certain jurisdictions where there are, tailor-made softwares, so AI probably do not have that, universal software like other software, like computer, like Microsoft and stuff like that. So there is a risk of error once you apply that AI. And obviously, as far as the difference is concerned, now the accountants probably, maybe they're working around, making more decision making. So, you'll be coming out of the number game. It will be more the application of the mind and, going into the decision making, being a chief value officer rather. So how do you see that? How challenge it will be like, if you develop a tailor-made software and it is error prone, and especially in the context of, having that CFO role, which is quite connected in AI, if we talk about, especially the jurisdiction of the US as well.
Thank you. Great question. So the question is around the adoption of tailor-made solutions, market solutions versus build yourself. And I think that's a really interesting question, actually. Now, I think, allow me to answer that in a couple of different ways. I think for organizations, it's important to just get going. Start to learn and embrace the tools, the technologies, the mindset within your organization, whether that's internal small bespoke things or more enterprise buying things. There is a technology market out there that is available to all organizations. Irrespective of which path, buy or build, do something. Because it's in that first step you learn lots. Okay. And then the buy versus build is predicated on the thing you're trying to solve, given several limitations, constraints, factors, features within your organization, right? You may already have many of the technologies required already in your disposal. So I had lots of conversations today around my organization is an SAP organization. Great. They do AI too. You're already paying for the licenses. So start there. If you don't have access to technologies that are already licensed, then start small on something that can be procured and used that has value, right? But my principal recommendation to everybody is you only learn through doing. So experiment, adopt, do it quickly, do it safely, do it in a non-critical area of your business. But in that 3-6 months, you will go on a journey and learn a huge amount. And that value within your organization is the point. You can't talk about AI and not be using AI. Yes. And that's why my first slide is this slide was built using AI. It's the point, right? Until you immerse yourself in the technology, how do you know where the value is it for your organization?
Thank you, Shabazz. So So I have a couple of questions, Andy. So let me ask the first one. So a lot of organizations in Pakistan, they are on-prem. So they would have ERP solutions on-prem. They have everything on-prem. So they are not cloud ready, or they're not they're not on cloud as of now. What's their utilization of AI? And what's the best what's the best approach they can take? And how much dependency is on cloud? Because you need, I think we were just discussing, you need a lot of computing power to run large language models, right? And a lot of this is dependent on either you need to have your data on cloud, or at least send some data to the model to run, and then you can use either analysis, or you want to generate content or whatever. So in an environment which we operate in Pakistan, where the cloud is a little bit distant, so what's the best approach, and what's the utilization? Thank you.
Okay, so let's look at this question through a few different lenses. To do AI, it's widely accepted that you need an infrastructure that is geared for AI. So the hardware required is new. Okay, I think that's the first point I'd mention. To do AI, you need a different type of chipset. So you're moving away from traditional CPU to GPU. And GPU is very expensive to procure and install in your infrastructures. Okay, so it's a challenge. It's a barrier to entry. And that's why I talk about the economics and the ROI of your whole business case has to factor in the infrastructure required for AI. Okay, so it's a consideration. The reason why most of the world has been able to adopt AI is because it's using hyperscaler technology. It's using pre-made investment by the likes of Microsoft, AWS, SAP, Oracle, and all the others to make the infrastructure go away. You pay for a service, and that service affords you the tools needed to do AI. So now you're at a really interesting decision point in your AI adoption, right? If things like security, and by security, let's talk about data residency, data that I need needs to stay in my organization, or it needs to stay in Pakistan. If that is a principal constraint or a condition, you then have to architect accordingly. So you then may be limited to infrastructure that is on-prem. Now, if that's the path in front of you, there are layers of AI, right? You don't need to start with the building of something like a ChatGPT, a large language model that was trained on billions of records, trillions of tokens, and these data centers the size of a small country to power. You can start small, and you can start in the open source community. Yeah. And those tools, those models are available to be run on-prem, right? And you can start with technologies that aren't as sophisticated as a GPT or a Gemini or a Claude, because you don't need the Rolls Royce to start going. Yeah. Often it's not binary. It's not GPT or nothing. Yeah. Because the use case in question, let's go back to that predictive churn model, can be done on an open source model on some infrastructure that you could procure within your organization to run. Perfectly feasible, gets you going. The use of hyperscaler technology is an acceleration and something afforded to organizations don't have the security limitations. Yeah, that's the point. In Saudi Arabia, data sovereignty is a big deal. And that means we can't use cloud technology. But it hasn't stopped Saudi progressing its AI agenda, right? And it's doing so because there are ways around that. Now, as an example to my second disclaimer that my presentation is already out of date, on Sunday, I read a really interesting article yesterday around a open source model, Generation 70B it's called, that claims to outperform GPT-4 because it created a new technique. And that model is free. It's on Hugging Face today. Go have a look for those that are interested, right? So the barriers to entry aren't necessarily restrictive and require cloud technology. And I think that's the point. And it just reinforces the first point about start small, start open source, experiment, learn and grow. When you start seeing the returns, the benefits of AI that warrant enterprise infrastructure, your business case is there. Until that point, don't worry.
Great, thank you. So you can start small with a small model. For those techies out there, Hugging Face is a portal where all the open source models are sourced, and you can go and play with it. Please.
Hi, Shehbaz. I just wanted to ask about what is fintech, and as a chartered accountant, how I can start learning finance technologies, and what sort of technologies are in demand. For example, I'll tell you my story. I'm just confused where to start learning the technologies. I started off with learning Power BI tool, and I have also worked with the developers. I developed some online accounting application using PHP Laravel. So now I'm a bit of confused, for me to learning the finance technology, should I go for the Python, R language, SQL? I'm thinking about it. And then again, a question pops up in my mind, what I'm doing. This is not my job. I don't need to write the code. So this is the misunderstanding and misclarity in my mind. I just wanted to ask you how I can start learning fintech and move on to data, AI, and data analytics. Thank you.
Before I answer the question, what is your job? So I can give you the context behind your question.
I am working as a consultant. I have a firm. So this is my job. I come across very different situations and very different analysis. Okay. Every day is a new challenge.
Good. So I get this question a lot about the skills and technologies of the future, right? And where should I start? Allow me to be a little bit provocative in that answer, right? It's not the language or the tool, right? Because learning Python, learning R, whilst great, probably has a shelf life of 2 to 3 years, right? So please. Okay. So, but it's a skill nonetheless, right? Learning Python, you can do in 6, 8 weeks. You can take a course and have a technology skill in your armory. Wonderful. For most people, that is not needed, right? If you are a developer, you need that skill. If you are a data scientist, you need that skill. If you are an accountant, I would question why you need that skill. An appreciation of it, sure. An ability to understand and interact with people who do that for you, great. It's about maintaining the value proposition you bring, right? And as a consultant, as an accountant, as someone working in finance or banking, you may not need to be hands-on with code because your time is more valuable and better spent elsewhere. If you are coding as a manager, I'd question why you're doing that. Your time is more valuable managing your team, creating the results you need, than worrying about the code error on line 52, right? Have people in your team that worry about that. So it becomes a question of the future of where you are in your career journey, right? If you're experienced, by experience, I mean kind of 5, 6, 7 years of experience behind you, I would question if you're not a developer, why are you using developer technologies? It makes no economic sense, right? What are the technologies?
In demand for me to become a data scientist
Yeah.
or data analyst
Yeah.
in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, okay, great question. So I would start with the fundamentals because the fundamentals haven't changed in 20 years. So becoming a certified data professional, Dharma, is the place to start because it tells me you understand data. If you understand data at that level, you can then open yourself up to several technologies that are contemporary right now. Python and R is one of them. Some of the tools of visualization, Power BI, Tableau are nice visualization tools. You can learn some more advanced scripting technologies. You can start to understand databases and SQL and these things, but that takes you on a developer career profile, right? I would say be a developer if you want to be a developer, right? But if you are not going to get hands-on with code, you don't need to go learn coding. Yeah, you won't be a very good developer.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
So being able to appreciate those things. So if you're a consultant, I would say actually having a agile certification, something like SAFe 5.0, something like TOGAF is a better investment in your time than actually worrying about, developing code.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Great. So we have an online question, I guess, is an auditor. So he's saying, does AI affect concepts such as professional judgment, which is we use in audit, like in your early days? So if yes, how, So for example, I'm using machine learning or AI to identify risks, for example, right? Or picking certain transactions to vouch or audit, right? Is AI going to replace that? If yes, how? If no, then what exactly is the role? I think just trying to ask what exactly the roles of auditors in coming days and months and years.
I think you're better placed to answer that question.
I think wants to hear from you. So my point is that I don't think AI is going to replace certain skill sets, as you mentioned, right? So empathy, for example, AI is not going to replace. Professional judgment, AI is not going to replace. It's still going to be there. We can make sophisticated tools to enable us to do a better job in doing professional judgment, for example. But I don't think, in short, AI is going to replace those skill sets. So that's, if you want to add something.
And controversially, don't put blind faith in the AI. Yeah, if you're training the model and it's like your first experimentation, going back to our topic on validity, accuracy, and trust, right? Being able to trust the output of a model is a complicated business, right? If accuracy is less than 95% and you're making judgments on this, then you have to take the context of that into account, right? So, an AI is only as good as the sophistication on what it's been trained in, and the accuracy will reflect that. So trust is a huge element that is often overlooked. And additionally, I would say that use both mindsets side by side. So do the thing you've always done, which is go give the advice based on the work that you've done. Alongside that, see what the model or the AI is doing to see, does that strengthen your position or weaken your position? If it weakens it, where does it weaken it? Does it spot something that you didn't see? So it's not an either or. It's, it can be used to complement rather than replace.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hello. We just spent most of our times in reading the mails or managing the team through mails. So you said we can generate the context. So roughly, I would say I spend 20-25% of my working hours in replying my emails or making SOPs for the team. So how can I generate the context? What apps or what method I can use and save my let's say 10 to 15% of the time of the team and use in another revenue. and what are the current applications? I just got to know about ChatGPT. What are the others, especially for the finance, that are there, so I can use them as well? Thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of email productivity, I would just say Copilot. You know, Copilot is phenomenal. If it's not part of your enterprise agreement in your organization, it's the best $20 I ever spent, because it just sits there and allows me to be much more productive. It is a subscription under Office 365. It is available. So Copilot, without a doubt, for enterprise use. For non-enterprise, Gemini does a fantastic job within Gmail. It's a plugin. Go get it. It's free. It's increasingly, becoming more and more embedded. If you're using email via browser, then use Edge, because Edge has a version of GPT integrated into it that is super useful. In terms of specific finance tools for AI, I would just point you to a website. There is an AI for that. So www.thereisanaI.com or .ai, I think. That's a library or marketplace of existing, often free to use AI tools that you can just explore and experiment with. There's several visualization tools on there that are very, very good.
Any recommended YouTube channels, or just like you said about Professor G Media? Yeah, any YouTube channels or related to?
Yeah, so many. There's honestly, more and more my kind of knowledge is just consumed by watching YouTube videos at 2x speed. I just crunch through them, in a very sad amount. That's not something that I should say in public forum recorded, but I do. Prof G is one. Matthew Burnham is another, from memory. But honestly, if you just kind of YouTube search AI, you'll see so many.
Okay.
I think IBM have a fantastic YouTube channel for concepts around AI. It's a wonderful set of material there. But equally, all of the technology companies have great YouTube channels. And in terms of free educational resources, I haven't found anything better.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So I think, let me ask the last question. I think Adnan wanted to know about the tools out there which make us life easy. So I think there are plenty of tools now. I think we can spend the next 4 hours discussing each and every one. So one I really love, and I would like Shabazz to maybe spend a couple of minutes and we can conclude it, is Notebook LM. That's my favorite. So maybe just say it's based on Gemini, Google's large language model, and Shabazz will tell you more. It's an amazing tool for if you want to research. So if you're going to spend,
Yeah, sure. Okay, so before I do Notebook LM, let me share a thought with you about how the market is evolving. So there is now a secondary market to AI. And what I mean by that is you have proprietary AI being accessed by GPT, by Gemini, by Claude. And these are, in industry terms, the proprietary models. These are large language models that, technology companies have invested in to allow you to do AI. So let's take Google's Gemini as an example. So an example of a proprietary closed AI model. Okay, there are thousands of open source models, and that's the open source model. Of the largest ones in that space, Meta's Llama. So there's an interesting evolution of open and free versus proprietary and closed. Right now, what's happening is third parties are coming along and using these models to do something specific. Right. So a example is a tool called Perplexity, which is taken the models and sits on top of it and says, now ask me any scholarly question you wish, because I will go use these models because different models have different advantages, different pros, different cons. And I will go and find you an answer that's more balanced, and I will give you the citation. So it's now evolving to be quite a useful service if you're in academic and scholarly fields. Whereas if you ask a question GPT, it'll give you an answer, but it won't give you the citation. So that's just an example of how the market is evolving for services that use the AI models. The service that Mohsen Bhai is showing you there is called Notebook LM, which is something out of Google that says, I would like you to just be that AI, but I would like you to just look at the information I'm going to give you. And what that does is restricts the power of Gemini right down to the 3 PDFs that you've given it, right? Because it will say, just look at these and look at these alone. And therefore, it reduces or it minimizes or eradicates hallucination. It will only give you an answer based on the information you're given it. So that's wonderful if you need to quickly extrapolate information from a 100-page PDF. You know, if you do that on GPT, it will still go out on side of the hallucination. If you do that in Notebook LM, the model is trained to be 100% specific on that data source. Yeah, you can say, look at this PDF, look at this website link, look at this image. And then your interaction is based just on those 3 data sources. So it's a wonderful way of really understanding something very quickly. And it's the power of an LLM concentrated onto a specific data set. Now, why that's amazing is that it will bring the power of that proprietary language model to you. So you can upload a PDF in Arabic, ask the question in Urdu, tell it to give you the response in Mandarin, no problem. Yeah, so it's really sophisticated. Tell it to look at the data set you've uploaded in an Excel, but give the response in a visualization that is a bar chart and do it in this way. It will do it, right? So it's a super tool. I use it a lot just to really, you know, quickly get information I need from a document without actually analyzing the document. And that's probably, again, something I shouldn't say on camera, being a consultant, but it's true. I do. And it saves me no end of time, especially working in Saudi where my source material is all in Arabic. If I get a 100-page Arabic contract, what am I going to do with that? Other than use Notebook LLM to summarize it, notate it, and give me the report in English.
Thank you, Shabazz. So let me just I was to talk about you. So you and Zishan's gonna love it. So I've tried it. So use open Notebook LM, upload income tax ordinance, upload few case laws, start asking question. You'll be surprised. Please.
Comes in my mind is how I will be taking care of confidentiality of my client information and the things. That is obviously because of the usage of the standard tools and the thing. The challenge which I'm working like in EY or KPMG or I think obviously these all organizations have their own tools and they don't allow to use the standards or options available for any client related information. But generally how the professional will be using, because all these facilities may not be available to everyone for their own licensed version or the thing are confidential. Even such organization, if you think such organizations are not using the licensed version of anything, rather they are developing their own version under their own control from where no information can be leaked or anything. So all these risks obviously are associated with using all these things. This is the one part obviously I need. The second, which is also very important for me by just listening your starting comment that I'm no more accountant, rather now I've changed the field. And I'm always thinking, because I have also been started in 1998 in the tax, and I'm not accountant now. I've never been claimed and any basic info or any such thing because I know, okay, my field is not of accountancy, rather I'm a tax person. But how you feel, how much it is important for professionals, because when we become a chartered accountant, first thing which normally people think that we want to become a CFO, we want to remain with there. And otherwise, if we use our background knowledge and then get any other specialization, how important it will be for future and for our other professionals. So these are the two different things. Yeah.
No, thank you. I love the way you phrase it. Now, I think in my career, integrity is a value I strive for. So in any professional context, doing the right thing is the only thing. So if I can't use a tool because of a security concern or a permission or a license, I have to respect that. Increasingly, how dumb it is doesn't matter, because I think organizations are now missing the efficiency gains of using Notebook LM as an example within their organization, right? You can save hours in a day. But if I don't have the organizational permission, then that's a challenge. And I think it's something that is a real consideration for professionals. I think that the technology is moving so fast that regulation and organizational behavior is caught up in that. And I think that the adage that I always try and stick to is do the right thing, right? I can experiment on my own time in tools and stuff, but I can't be, seen to be loading client data into open public systems that compromise that client data. That's a red line. But I think we've always had that red line. It's just that the tool might have been different, right? And our ability to use the tool may not have been given permission. So I don't think the problem is new, just because it's AI. And I don't necessarily think the answer is new, because professional standards should always be professional standards. We should maintain that integrity throughout. And just because a tool has come along to promise you something else, I don't think you should compromise that permission, which is, I think, the point you're making.
Anything. Everyone is very anxious to use that.
Of course.
And when in that system, obviously we forget certain things. Even my mind will not think that I need the permission of my client to put any info in that. Obviously, even this question will not arise at that time. So we should be very, very conscious, obviously, for while using for that. So this is obviously a challenge which should be addressed accordingly.
100%. And this is where organizational policies need to be faster, right? And guidance needs to be given to employees quicker, right? Because it may be an innocent mistake, but the implication is still real, right? And AI is moving so fast that the tool that you might think is perfectly safe may put you in a compromised position. To be fair, that's the role of the organization to help you navigate.
Right. Thank you.
And another thing, important thing for my young professional, obviously, that the specialization versus a normal accountancy, that is.
Yeah. Great point. I think my career has been a career of a generalist, actually, right? And so I'm probably the wrong person to talk about specialization. I thought I knew that I wanted to be an accountant until I realized I didn't. And I've then had a career that I'm very privileged to have had in sitting between technology and business. But that is a role of a generalist, not a specialist.
Thank you. Thank you, Shabazz. I think it was wonderful talking to you and answering so many questions. I'm glad to have you here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
We have a number of people with us. May I request our own VP, Zishan, and my colleague in KPMG to come over and please say a few words, and we can conclude the event. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Mohsen. Artificial intelligence. And thank you, by the way. Where is Shabazz? I can't see him. There is. Exactly. So much technology. Shabazz, wonderful session. MashaAllah. I mean, yes, in between I left, but you saw when your presentation started, I was there. So one thing I would like to highlight, I've been reading about this technology and everything, and you touched a little bit on that in your question answer session with Mohsen. I was reading somewhere, some Australian journalist said that we are living in an interesting world. And that's full of technology and technopanic. I mentioned that somewhere also. So not only we are somehow enthusiastic about that, but we are fearful also. That's what's coming. And you highlighted that point there that your presentation might be outdated by the time you are actually giving it, delivering it. So, I mean, we haven't thought about it in this manner, but that's the interesting part. The way the technology is changing, we need to understand that, and we need to realize that, and we need to upscale ourselves, actually. Generally, the perception, one of the things which you discussed during the panel discussion, and there was a question on that, was that what is going to happen about the professions and what's going to be because of technology coming in. So that's the general fear. I mean, I also mentioned about the same thing, that there was a report from McKinsey Global Institute that by 2065, perhaps most probably only 5% of the professions or the occupations are going to be automated. By automation, they are saying that only 50% of that 5% going to be completely automated. So the important part is being fearful is an important thing, but more importantly, we need to understand that in our lifetimes, we need to understand that things are going to change. Our perceptions, our way of working going to change, but the occupations are still going to be there, frankly speaking. So if you ask me, the organizational structure, the future would be more like we will be there. So there would be divided into 3 different, I would say, teams. One would be the enablers of the technology, techies, who are going to be there. And the other would be perhaps data analytics specialists who are going to analyze what are the requirements of the organizations and what's happening in the world. And they are going to make sure that by the time the presentation is going to be delivered, they should not be outdated. And lastly, us, who are going to be the users of those technologies. So again, the question is, the users are going to be there, but we need to understand that we need to upscale ourselves to the level. We are not going to be, somebody asked a question that what should be doing, and you rightly answered. We are not going to be the specialist technology person, but we should be knowing how to use it. So that's an important part. And frankly speaking, that's where Institute comes in. You must have gone through the new education scheme. We are bringing in the subject related to technology. There are a lot of activity going on. This particular activity is part of that objective and that whole mind frame to bring our members and the students to the level wherein they can actually be able to use and understand the importance of the times we are living in and which is going to be coming, which is already there actually. So with this, I think Ahmed is going to, exactly. Thank you very much, Shabazz, once again, and Mohsin. That was a very inviting session. Thank you very much.
Please stay on the stage. I would like to request our past president, Ifhat Aisab, for presenting of the memento to the esteemed guests. Please, Shivasa, please. Asad Saab. Asad Saab. Abhay Saab, please join us on the stage. Aryan sir. बेटे ये भी पीछे करो ये बोलो